This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus, coming to you live from Manila and Thailand. Hello, Faye. Thank you for keeping me company today.
Hello, I am Faye Barta from your ABC Thailand Bureau, bringing you the latest news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines, the U.S. State Department has advised against travel to the Philippines.
President Duterte expressed apprehension over the proposal of the Department of Labor and Employment to shorten the mandated 14-day quarantine period for returning overseas Filipino workers.
The Indonesian National Search and Rescue Agency has deployed vessels to help the search operation for an Indonesian Navy submarine with 53 crew aboard that lost contact off the coast of Bali.
Department of Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi has vowed to take necessary steps to protect oil and gas resources in the Philippines Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ, should any foreign state be engaged in petroleum activities without any permission from his office.
The U.S. State Department has advised against travel to the Philippines. The Department of State said the update will result in a significant increase in the number of countries at level 4. Now that means do not travel to approximately 80% of countries worldwide. Level 4 is the highest travel warning category of the State Department. The U.S. already has 34 countries, including Chad, Kosovo, Kenya, Argentina, Russia, and Tanzania, under the Level 4 warning. About 130 more will be added now, according to Deutsche Welle, Germany's international broadcaster. The State Department, meanwhile, added that the ban doesn't imply a reassessment of the current health situation in a given country, but it reflects an adjustment in the State Department's travel advisory system to rely more on Center for Disease Control's existing epidemiological assessments. Its advisory added that the COVID-19 outbreak continues to pose unprecedented risks to travelers. In light of those risks, the department strongly recommended that U.S. citizens reconsider all travel abroad.
Staying in the Philippines, President Duterte expressed apprehension over the proposal of the Department of Labor and Employment to shorten the mandated 14-day quarantine period for returning overseas Filipino workers. Let's watch this.
Well, unless also there is something or more than just what I'm hearing now and previously, I must also be convinced that it is really medyo I'm quite not comfortable with the relaxation that it's being brought about, being bruited now. Ako medyo but
gusto ko pong sang-ayunan yung sinasabi kanina ni Dr. Ana Onglin, kung nag-verbal test at the time of arrival. So kung mag-test tayo sa time of arrival, pwede rin po mag-false negative yun, di ba? Kung mag-test naman po tayo on the 5th day or on the 7th day, mas maganda yung chances na makatch natin. But at the very least po, Mr. President, we really have to enforce yung strict quarantine. No? It could be 10 days. The most ideal is 14 days. In other countries, they even do it for 21 days. So, yun po yung nakikita natin. At sa pag-aaral po natin, Mr. President, based on genomic sequences, may isa lang na makalusot. May isa lang na makalusot. Manganak siya ng marami. If you see the genetic tree po ng virus, may isa lang makalusot, 5. Ang 5 manganak. At ito, yan po yung nakikita natin dito sa mga B117, itong UK variant, at ito yung mga South African variant. Kung titingnan po yung roots nila, 1, 2 lang makalusot, manganak na sila ng manganak.
In an April 17 public advisory posted by the Department of Foreign Affairs, all returning OFWs are reminded that they are required to undergo a 14-day quarantine in isolation facilities upon the arrival in the country. Medical experts who attended a virtual meeting told President Duterte that it would be ideal to shorten the OFW's quarantine period from the current 14 days to 10 days, provided that they remain asymptomatic.
The UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of Myanmar rights said that the Myanmar military junta's crackdown on anti-coup protesters has displaced nearly 250,000 people. Gila Pablo is monitoring the events from Thailand. Gila.
Yes, Alma, good afternoon. Again, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and his predecessor Ban Ki-moon on Monday urged governments in Southeast Asia to push to end the crisis in Myanmar during a video conference of Security Council leaders. Let's watch this. Junta leader Min Aung Hlaing is expected to join the ASEAN summit, his first official overseas trip since the February coup that ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi. The army has moved to quell mass protest against its rule, killing at least 730 people according to a local monitoring group. In another development, the EU announced sanctions on 10 Myanmar junta officials and 2 conglomerates linked to the military over the coup and bloody crackdown on protesters in their country. Announcing the sanctions and officials, EU member states said the individuals are all responsible for undermining democracy and the rule of law in Myanmar and for repressive decisions and serious human rights violations. The 2 firms hit with asset freezes and visa bans. Myanmar Economic Holdings Public Company Limited, MEHL, and Myanmar Economic Corporation Limited, MEC, were owned and controlled by the Myanmar Armed Forces, Tatmadaw, and provide revenue for it. The companies dominate sectors including trading, alcohol, cigarettes, and consumer goods. EU diplomats said the officials targeted are mostly members of the ruling State Administration Council, seen as responsible for undermining the democracy in the Southeast Asian nation. The military has ramped up its attempts to crush dissent following mass demonstrations against its ousting of civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi, with at least 737 civilians killed and the press increasingly under attack. In fact, Japan is urging Myanmar authorities to release a Japanese journalist in custody at a Yangon prison, one of at least 65 reporters arrested during the junta's crackdown on anti-coup protests. Freelance reporter Yuki Kitazumi was detained on Sunday. And a Japanese embassy spokesman confirmed that he was transferred overnight from a police watch house to the insane prison. The press has been caught in the junta's crackdown as the military attempts to tighten control over the flow of information, throttling internet access and revoking the licenses of 5 local media outlets. At least 34 journalists and photographers remain in custody across Myanmar, according to monitoring group reporting ASEAN. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you very much for your update, Gila. Stay safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Alma. Thank you so much, Alma. Again, this is Gila Pablo reporting for EBC ASEAN Bureau. We live in interesting times.
The U.S. Treasury placed Myanmar state-owned timber and pearl businesses on its sanctions blacklist Wednesday, saying they were used to generate revenue for the military regime. The Treasury placed sanctions on Myanmar Timber Enterprise and Myanmar Pearl Enterprise, which are responsible for timber and pearl exports from the former Burma. The sanctions aim to restrict the company's access to the global trading and financial system by forbidding U.S. individuals and companies, including banks with U.S. arms, from doing business with them. The sanctions also freeze any property held by the two companies under U.S. jurisdiction. The sanctions came as Washington seeks to add pressure on the country's military after it ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi and seized power in a February 1 coup. Since then, protests have swept the country and at least 738 people have been killed and 3,300 are languishing in jails as political prisoners, according to a local monitoring group.
In Vietnam, Reunification Day and May Day holiday will last up to 4 days to boost tourism. Here's Mika Gwyneth Apostol joining us live. Hello, Mika.
Hello, Alma. According to London News, domestic tourism once again elevates. Finally, after a long period of time of enduring the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, travel demand rises specifically for the upcoming holiday. As of April 20, many respected or known travel agencies have accomplished 80% of their sales targets for their Reunification Day, April 30, and the May Day holiday. Correspondingly, major tourist companies like Viet Travel, Saigon Tourist, Hanoi Tourist, and Flamingo Red Tours have acquired a lot of bookings every day, with the most popular destinations picked by the customers including Dalat, Vung Tau, Da Nang, Nha Trang, Phuoc Cuoc, Ho Chi Minh City, Sapa, and Mui Ne. As always, beaches still win much approval from tourists for their summer vacations. Since March, tour agents and airlines have introduced promotional tour packages to carry out the growing travel requests of customers for the occasion. For example, Viet Travel provides its customers tours starting from only 699,000 Vietnam dong, while Flamingo Red Tours has started a huge number of tours with prices discounted by up to 30%. Similarly, domestic airlines have launched many cheap air tickets and increased their number of flights. The Vietnam Airlines Group, consisting Vietnam Airlines, Pacific Airlines, and Vasco, stated it will add almost 500,000 seats, equal to about 2,600 flights, for the approaching 4-day holiday, of which national flag carrier Vietnam Airlines and Vasco will utilize more or less 2,100 flights, with 4,300 seats throughout the holiday. Flights have been added together on tours to famous tourist destinations such as Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, Da Nang, Quy Nhon, Dalat, and Phuoc Cuoc Island with different schedules. For the moment, Bamboo Airways aims to expand its flights to tourist attractions by 12 to 15% on routes to Koh Non, Phuoc Puc, and Nha Trang. The director of Hanoi Tourist Company, Phung Quang Sang, claimed that the COVID-19 pandemic has changed people's travel behavior. Before, visitors prefer full package tours, but now they prefer to travel in small groups with friends and family members so as to prevent traveling in public transportation and avoid dealing with strangers. Travel companies have then constructed fast adjustments to fit customers' demand by initiating a flight and hotel travel package deals. In connection with Vietnam has not yet opened its doors to tourists, the only way to redeem tourism industry is to focus on domestic visitors. For that reason, tourism service providers need to upgrade their competitiveness through creating more new products. To add, travel companies have also resumed applying COVID-19 prevention and control measures to make sure of the welfare of visitors. Local authorities need to prepare complex answers to COVID-19, which can be activated on time in case of emergencies. The safety measures and awareness are key ingredients for the tourism sector to return on track in the new normal situation. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you very much, and stay safe, and looking forward to more updates there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alma. This is Micah Gunesa Fosco from EBC Vietnam Bureau. We live in interesting times.
Now in Malaysia kicks off second vaccination drive, and we're going to hear more with our EBC Malaysia Bureau, Alfred Baume. Alfred?
Yes. In Malaysia, more vaccine doses are expected to arrive by May, but the country has already kicked off the second phase of the national COVID-19 immunization program that started with the vaccination of 9,916 senior citizens, the disabled, and those with comorbidities. Program Coordinating Minister Khairi Hamaludin said phase 2 also saw 30 non-medical vaccination centers open in Kedah, Melaka, Negri Sembilan, Pahang, Penang, Perlis, Terengganu, Sabah, Sarawak, and Labuan. These additional centers consisted of public halls, among other facilities. This is to complement the current 600 centers. He noted that 1,438,974 senior citizens aged above 60 had registered from the vaccine, while 136,798 people with disabilities and 2,029,297 persons with comorbidities had signed up. During the press conference, Khairi highlighted that Malaysia was scheduled to receive 1,038,960 doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine and 500,000 doses of Sinovac finished product in May. The total supply of Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine received in April would be 712,530 doses, while the country also had Sinovac vaccine from Pamanyaga that would be able to produce up to 2.6 million doses. The Sinovac doses from Pamanyaga was still pending approval from the National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency. Khairi had previously been reporting as saying that one of the main reasons why the present supply of the vaccine remains low here was because of rich nations had been hoarding vaccines, adding that they had cornered the vaccine market and bought enough to vaccinate their citizens 3 to 5 times over. As the rollout of the program gets underway, Khairi said teachers would be given the same priority as other eligible vaccine recipients during this phase, but it would be subject to the availability of the vaccine. He added the COVID-19 vaccine supply access guarantee special committee had determined that teachers would be given the same priority as the elderly, those with comorbidity, and persons with disability in the second phase. This applies to about 500,000 teachers, both in the public and private sectors nationwide. Separately, he said vaccine would be given to athletes who were representing Malaysia in international competition. This is under the category of national significance, and we have seen that in this case in other countries such as New Zealand that allow their athletes who are competing in the Olympic to get early jobs. Malaysia will also be taking the same approach, adding that some athletes in the country had already been vaccinated as they were competing in the qualifying rounds. On criticism that the country was running behind its vaccination program, Kerry clarified that they were not and was instead keeping to the schedule of the paces as announced earlier. Back to you, Faith.
Thank you very much, Alfred Balmes, for that report. Keep safe there, and please keep the updates coming.
Thank you. Reporting from Kuala Lumpur, this is Alfred Balmes. We live in interesting time.
The Indonesian National Search and Rescue Agency has deployed vessels to help the search operation for an Indonesian Navy submarine with 53 crew aboard that lost contact off the coast of Bali. Authorities said the German-built KRI Nanggala 402 was scheduled to conduct live torpedo exercises when it asked permission to dive early Wednesday morning. Now, a helicopter looking for the missing vessel spotted an oil spill in waters where the submarine was thought to have submerged. The Navy said it hasn't pinpointed the exact location. Take a look.
Dan kita sebagai Basarnas, karena itu alutsistanya TNI ya, pada intinya kalau memang TNI membutuhkan kita siap bantu. Itulah upaya-upaya preventif kita lakukan di sini. Sementara kita geser ke pelabuhan terdekat, sekiranya diperlukan kami lebih cepat untuk bisa mendekat ke lokasi pencarian yang dicurigai terjadinya insiden.
The Navy said it doesn't know the exact location of the submarine but had narrowed down the search based on the spill. The military has dispatched some 400 personnel and 2 warships in the hunt, while a third vessel was being deployed from the capital, Jakarta. The Defense Ministry said it also sent out an international distress signal, and several countries have responded and are ready to help, including Singapore, Malaysia, and India. There were 53 crew aboard the vessel, which was believed to be in waters about 700 meters deep or 2,300 feet deep. Indonesia, which has been moving to upgrade its military equipment in recent years, has 5 German and South Korean built submarines in its fleet. Now, the 1,300-ton KRI Nanggala 402, as you can see here, was built in 1978. That according to its government website.
Dalam lambung kapal selam Nanggala, sunu oleh Kepala Staf TNI Angkatan Laut, Laksamana TNI Marskio, di dalam kapal dan jajaran TNI Angkatan yang selalu siap sedia mengemban tugas negara. Song 2 yang menyelam di kedalaman, perhatian pengembangan kapal selam secara langsung mau ada
Now in the Philippines, Bising weekend and decelerated over the Philippine Sea, the Weather Bureau said on Thursday. Bising now packs maximum sustained winds of 150 km per hour near the center and gustiness of up to 185 km per hour, moving northward at 10 km per hour. It was last tracked 350 kilometers east of Calayan, Cagayan. Here's more. Let's watch this.
Eagle News will be right back.
Tita, kaya niyo po ba?
Kakayanin ko. Kailangan mahanap natin ang Sige.
Tanda na po.
Kilala niyo po ba siya?
Benedict Salazar. Alam ko na ang sikreto mo, Maya.
Dalin mo ako sa location ng hilaw na Espanyol.
Nag-hire na ako, boss. Nagagawa niya para sa'yo.
Ako na mismo gagawa ng trabaho para sigurado tapos.
Parang may bisita eh. Tago ka. Huwag kang gagalaw dyan.
San man tayo maglakbay, sila ang ating kaagapay. Suot-suot natin, mapadaan man sa patag o lubak ng buhay.
Family nung asawa ko, mga magchichanelas sila dito sa Liliw, Laguna.
Ang sapatos kasi kasama si Gus na tawag na mga basic needs. No?
Sobrang tibay po talaga niya. Parang bibilangin ng taon bago po siya masira.
Kaya kung nagnanais kayong pumasok sa kabuhayang ito, aba, siyempre, tutulungan namin kayo dyan.
Unti-unti ko nang pinag-aralan kung paano lahat patakbuhin ang negosyo sa paggawa ng sapatos dito sa Marikina.
Dumami-dami na yung mga order sa amin. Kaya sabi ko, ano kaya kung tayo na kaya ang gumawa?
Business namin na nabubuhay at nagpaaral po sa aming magkakapatid.
Baka ito na ang negosyong perfect fit para sa inyo. Ako po, si Robin Padilla. At ito po ang ulat. Agapay sa hanap buhay.
Sa hanap buhay. Oh babe, I love you. Wala na ngang iba. Dito sa puso ko ay tunay kang nag-iisa. Ingatan mo itong pag-ibig na para lamang sa iyo sa habang panahon. Kaya ingatan mo ito natin.
Hello mga kaibigan, ako po si Chad Borja. Sana po abangan niyo ako bilang isang guest performer sa Letters and Music this Sunday, April 25, 1 to 2 p.m. dito lamang sa Net 25. Maraming salamat.
Events happen around us all the time. In our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced, eagle news, because we live in interesting times.
Malalayong lugar ang kanilang narating para maghanap buhay. Tulungan ang pamilyang iniwan sa sariling bayan. Yan ang ating mga overseas Filipino worker. Pero dahil sa di pangkaraniwang pangyayaring hatid ay krisis, may ilan sa kanilang nagpasyang umuwi. Pinagyaman ang sariling lupain, nagtayo ng negosyo na kasama sa puhunan ang sipag at tiyaga. Ang mga OFW, maraming sakripisyo, ninanais maging kapaki-pakinabang maging sa kanilang pagbabalik bansa. Sapagkat ang ating mga bagong bayani, Pilipino pa rin sa puso at damdamin.
It says the best defense is still containment.
We are in uncharted territory.
Final volume 450. The 5 on to 100%. Standing by. Construction.
Malaysian leader Mahathir Mohamad delivered a petition to the National Palace urging the king to revoke a COVID-19 state of emergency, saying it had transformed the country into a dictatorship. The monarch declared the nationwide emergency in January on the advice of Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin in a bid to fight the coronavirus as cases spiraled out of control. But Parliament was also suspended, prompting critics to accuse Muhyiddin of using the virus crisis to cling to power after allies in his crisis-racked ruling coalition deserted him. On Tuesday, 95-year-old Mahathir, who was Prime Minister until his government collapsed and amid infighting about a year ago, brought a petition with over 39,000 signatures to the National Palace in Kuala Lumpur. The petition, delivered along with other opposition politicians, warned the emergency was damaging the economy, Malaysia's image internationally, and democracy. Before heading to the palace, Mahathir warned in a blog post the emergency was undermining the rule of law and the country was being ruled by decree. The voice of the people in a functioning democracy is via parliament, but it is not open, wrote Mahathir, who was prime minister twice from 1981 to 2003 and 2018 to 2020. He said the only description we can make of this government is that it is a dictatorship. He also said the emergency was about a weak government waiting to stay in power or wanting to stay in power and not about fighting COVID-19. Supporters of the state of emergency, which runs until August 1, argue it's needed to channel extra resources to fighting the outbreak. Muhyiddin, who came to power in March last year without an election following the collapse of Mahathir's government, has vowed to hold national polls once the pandemic is over.
The annual report by Reporters Without Borders said Tuesday that journalism was at least partly blocked in nearly 3/4 of the 180 countries surveyed. Its World Press Freedom Index found 73 countries totally blocked or seriously impeded journalism, while it was constrained in 59 others, adding that many governments had used the pandemic to worsen repression. Journalism is the best vaccine against disinformation, RSF Secretary General Christopher Delores said in a statement. Unfortunately, its production and distribution are too often blocked by political, economic, technological, and sometimes even cultural factors. Eritrea, North Korea, Turkmenistan, China, and Djibouti fared worse overall in this year's RSF ranking. Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Costa Rica were ranked highest. The Middle East and North Africa region continues to be the most repressive for journalists. The report found highlighting the worsening situation in Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Syria over the past year. Malaysia recorded the worst deterioration, down 18 places in the ranking to 119 due to in part to a recent anti-fake news law allowing the government to impose its own version of the truth. The World Press Freedom Index is based on questionnaires sent to experts around the world, combined with data on abuse and acts of violence against journalists to form a picture that includes pluralism, media independence, self-censorship, and other factors.
Typhoon Bising weakened and decelerated over the Philippine Sea, according to Pagasa. Let's listen in.
As of 4 a.m. po, huli po natin na mataan ang sentro o yung eye po ng bagyo sa layong 350 kilometers. Silangan po yan ng Calayan, Cagayan. At yung kanya pong lakas, yung maximum sustained wind niya po ay umaabot ng 150 kilometers per hour. Malapit po yun sa sentro at ang pagbugso naman ay umaabot ng 185 kilometers per hour. So bahagya pong humina siya kumpara po kagabi. Yung movement niya pa rin ay nasa northward pa rin po or pahilaga sa bilis na 10 kilometers per hour. Meron pa rin po tayo nakataas na signal number 1, Tropical Cyclone Wind Signal number 1 dito po sa mga isla sa may extreme northern Luzon. Ito pong Batanes, gayon din po itong eastern portion ng Cagayan, kasama na po ang Babuyan Islands. eastern portion rin po ng Isabela, pero yung sa Isabela po ay nabawasan po yung mga municipalities na meron po tayong signal number 1. So habang papalayo po yung ating bagyo, asahan po natin na unti-unti mababawasan po yung ating signal at yung inaasahan lang po nating signal ngayon ay signal number 1 lamang po. So ito po yung ating forecast track ng ating bagyo. Asahan po natin na magno-northward po siya and then mag-east po siya. So pa-recurve na po siya o papalayo dito po sa ating bansa. So yung track and intensity po niya, si Bagyong Bising po ay generally ngayon po ay pa-northward po siya or pa-north-northeastward ngayong araw habang papalayo po yan sa ating bansa sa landmass po ng Luzon. And then, ito po'y mag-i-east-northeastward. Tomorrow po yan, April 23. And then, mag-i-eastward po on Saturday, April 24. Lalabas po siya ng Philippine Area of Responsibility by Saturday evening or Sunday early morning. So, either April 24 or 25 po yung ating exit ng PAR. Si Bising po, dahan-dahan po yung hina hanggang sa ating forecast period po. So mag-downgraded po yan to severe tropical storm by tomorrow po and then tropical storm category by Saturday and then magta-transition po siya into extra tropical cyclone pero nasa labas naman po siya ng PAR by Monday, April 26.
Now here in Thailand, it is close to completing world's biggest hydro-floating solar farm. Let's hear more from our EBC Thailand Bureau, Christelle Nicole de Marocot. Hi, Christelle.
Good afternoon, Faye, and to all our viewers. Since today, April 22, is Earth Day, here's an Earth-friendly update from Thailand. According to Thai PBS World, Thailand is almost done in completing one of the world's biggest hydro-floating solar hybrid projects on the surface of a dam, part of steps toward boosting renewable energy production after years of criticism for reliance on fossil fuels. As being reported by the Reuters, some 144,417 units of solar panels are being installed on a reservoir in the northeast province of Ubon Ratchathani, where workers are finishing the last of 7 solar farms, which will cover 121 hectares of water area. The authority's goal is to complete the project in June. Chanin Salichan, chief of the hydro-floating solar hybrid project at Sirindorn Dam, stated that the recent development of the project is at 90% completion. The area for the project is divided into 7 platforms of floating solar cell panels. He said, and I quote, "Now we've installed 5.5 platforms. There are still 1.5 platforms to work on, which we expect complete by the end of April. And we think we will be ready to distribute electricity with this by the end of June 2021. The Electricity Generating Authority has been installing floating solar platforms at the Sirindorn Dam since November. It is one of the country's largest hydropower dams and has an estimated capacity to generate 45 megawatts of power. The state-run Electricity Generation Authority of Thailand, or EGAT, advertises that the pilot project as one of the world's largest hybrid hydro-solar power ventures, and it plans to replicate it at 8 more dams over the next 16 years. An energy management system, or EMS, will be used to switch between solar and hydropower, depends on which has more strength to generate electricity. A hybrid system, Project Chief Chanin Salichan said, allows continuous power generation. Moreover, the director of Bangkok-based non-governmental group Energy and Ecology Network, however, said that the floating solar hydro plant could cause an unnecessary and potential costly capacity excess, although he supports investment in renewable energy. Lastly, Faye, Thailand has been relying on coal for its power, but plans for a new coal-fired projects have been met in contradiction over health and environmental risks, which includes 2 plants coal plants shelved in 2018. It is aiming to draw 35% of its energy from non-fossil fuel sources by 2037, according to its latest power development plan. And that's the latest news here in Thailand. Back to you, Faye.
Thank you very much, Crystal Nicole de Marucot. Please stay please stay healthy and please keep the updates coming there in Bangkok.
Thank you, Faye. Again, happy Earth Day. Reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand. This is Crystal Nicole de Marucot. We live in interesting times.
The National Task Force for the West Philippine Sea is coordinating for the development of more assets needed by area task forces in securing the country's control and sovereignty over the maritime territory. In compliance with the directive of President Duterte to sustain our sovereignty patrols in the WPS or West Philippine Sea, increase the safety of life at sea operations, and intensified operations against illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, the NTF-WPS has coordinated for the deployment of more assets. This under the control of its ATF, according to the spokesperson, Assistant Secretary Omar Romero, in a statement today. To augment the vessels and aircraft currently under the country of ATFs, he said, or ATFs, he said the government has deployed 4 Philippine Coast Guard vessels, 1 PCG aircraft, 5 Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources or BFAR vessels, 4 WPS maritime patrols, and Philippine National Police Maritime Group, high-speed tactical watercraft and rubber boats for maritime law enforcement in the coastal areas. The Philippines, he said, has sovereignty over the features and the surrounding territorial seas in Kalayaan, Palawan, and enjoys sovereign rights over its exclusive economic zone within the West Philippine Sea. Meanwhile, ATF North covers Bao de Masinloc, the islands north of Cagayan, Batanes Province, the Philippine Rise, and the latter's extended continental shelf. It also maintains detachments on the islands of Batanes. NTF-WS spokesperson, Assistant Secretary Omar Romero, also said that the NTF-WPS remains firm in upholding sovereignty over its territory.
Staying here in Thailand, Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha has ordered an increase in the capability of COVID-19 hotlines after people complained about not being able to get through. General Prayut Chan-o-cha said he had someone call the COVID-19 hotlines and no one answered the calls. He has instructed the responsible agencies to solve this problem. General Prayut also instructed the military to help transport patients by sending its ambulances to help, saying he had learned that private hospitals were reluctant to receive COVID-19 patients due to their limited bed capacity. Meanwhile, Secretary General of the National Health Secretary or Security Office, Jaded Tamachatrasi, said the problem of beds for COVID-19 patients was mostly found in Bangkok and admitted that some patients had not yet had beds allocated. The doctor suggested that patients with mild symptoms stay at home while waiting for beds. They will be called every 6 hours to follow up on their symptoms and will be taken to the hospital immediately if the symptoms get worse. Authorities have instated interprovincial travel restrictions right before Songkran New Year festivities this week, usually a period when Thais vacation or return to their hometowns. The typically rowdy holiday is also marked by water fights on the streets, but Bangkok was quiet this week with bars, restaurants, and night markets closed early. New restrictions will bite from Sunday, including an alcohol ban in restaurants and bars, while entertainment venues will be shuttered across the country for 2 weeks.
In Vietnam, Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh will attend the ASEAN leaders meeting in Jakarta, Indonesia from the 23rd to the 24th. This is Pham's first foreign trip since he became Prime Minister of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam on April 5. Consolidating and enhancing solidarity and mutual assistance among ASEAN states is one of the priorities in Vietnam's foreign policy, which will contribute to heightening the bloc's centrality and position in handling emerging challenges, thus creating a peaceful environment conducive to sustainable development in each member country as well as the whole region. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and his predecessor Ban Ki-moon on Monday has urged governments in Southeast Asia to push to end the crisis in Myanmar during a video conference of Security Council leaders. He said he regretted divisions within ASEAN that have prevented a united response and called for the UN Security Council, which has also been split over Myanmar, to act decisively to prevent the worst in Myanmar and beyond.
Now in Malacanang, confirmed the Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga has postponed his planned official visit to the Philippines. In a statement, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque disclosed that Japanese Prime Minister made the decision to first focus on the COVID-19 crisis in Japan. Defeating the COVID-19 pandemic is high on both the Philippines and Japan's agenda and remains a key point of cooperation, according to Mr. Roque. The decision to postpone a planned official visit based on this ground therefore deserves support, he added. Despite the deferred visit, Roque said the country's strategic partnership and broad cooperation with Japan will remain strong. The Japanese government is expected to decide this week if it will declare a state of emergency in some parts of Japan to address the latest surge of COVID-19 cases in the said areas.
The coronavirus pandemic has created the worst crisis in Asia-Pacific since World War II, exposing structural weaknesses and fault lines and revealing gaps in health services, social protection, and digital connectivity in the region, according to a new study. The study, Beyond the Pandemic, Building Back Better from Crisis in Asia, has been prepared by the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. It said countries across the region suffered economic contractions along with interruptions in trade, disrupted supply chains, and the collapse of international tourism, leading to widespread job losses and increases in poverty. It proposed 4 critical interconnected areas: broadening social protection, investing in a sustained recovery, keeping goods and information flowing, and mending a broken relationship with nature. According to the study's simulations for 13 developing countries in the region, if governments offered universal child benefits, disability benefits, and old age pensions at a conservative benefit levels, more than 1/3 of people would be lifted out of poverty. It said in the poorest households in Indonesia, the Maldives, the Philippines, and Sri Lanka, this basic social protection package would increase purchasing power by around 50%. Apart from economic and social upheavals, the pandemic has also posed several challenges in terms of environmental and climate change. According to the study, while the virus brought economic production and travel to a halt, the region saw dramatically boosted air and water quality and reduced greenhouse gas emissions. The region's biodiversity has also taken a hit from the pandemic. The extent of the damage is evident from the region's Biodiversity Intactness Index score, which is the lowest in the world over recent decades. Asia and the Pacific has lost over 60% of its mangroves and 40% of its coral reefs. Environmental damage is also being intensified by global warming. Asia and the Pacific has 6 of the top 10 global carbon emitters, generating more than half of the world's greenhouse gas emissions.
Seven members of crew forced to abandon their cargo ship after it ran aground during a typhoon in the Philippines have been rescued and the bodies of 4 others found, authorities said on Wednesday. Search teams were still looking for 9 crew members 2 days after the Cebu Great Ocean vessel hit the shore at Malimono town on the southern island of Mindanao. Local disaster officer Aladin Sumampong said the survivors were taken to hospital for treatment and were in a stable condition. The Philippine-registered vessel laden with nickel ore and carrying 2,000 liters or 528 gallons of diesel fuel was still afloat, according to Sumampong. 2 of the survivors were found on a beach with the bodies of 2 colleagues and they had carried while swimming to shore. At least 3 people have died in the central and southern Philippines as Typhoon Surigis skirts the country. Authorities said forcing tens of thousands to seek shelter from flooding and strong winds.
The Department of Labor and the Department of Energy, Secretary Alfonso Cusi has vowed to take necessary steps to protect oil and gas resources in the Philippines' exclusive economic zone should any foreign state be engaged in petroleum activities without any permission from his office. Cusi made the statement Wednesday, supporting President Duterte's statement in his weekly talk to the people Monday, asserting the country's exclusive licensing authority over petroleum and other resources in the West Philippine Sea. He said only the Philippine government, through the DOE, may issue licenses to drill for oil and gas resources within its territory, its islands, internal waters, territorial sea, exclusive economic zone, and continental shelf. He said should any foreign state engage in petroleum activities inside the Philippine petroleum jurisdiction, the DOE shall take the necessary steps to protect our licenses and preserve our resources. But Cusi also said the DOE shall defer to the sole prerogative of the President regarding any security option. And the presence of Chinese vessels in the Julian Felipe Reef. President Duterte earlier said he would deploy military ships in the West Philippine Sea should China conduct its own oil drilling in the waters within the Philippine EEZ. Thank you for keeping me company today, as always, Faye.
Thank you also, Alma, and you are always welcome. This is Faye Barte from your EBC Thailand Bureau, and we will continue to bring the latest news around the ASEAN region. And we live in interesting times.
Thank you very much. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.